There are some people making grass coffee and then they come. I try my best.
All right. Well, I don't think there's enough people here to start right now, so I'm just going to sit here and meditate. Sage on the stage.
Okay, you're online. Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay.
It's the morning after the night before, isn't it?
Morning after the 3 days.
I think all the parties have finally taken their toll.
Well, it's you telling everyone to go to bed early on Thursday night. Party till 4 in the morning.
I didn't think they even heard me on Thursday night.
Told us to go to bed early on Wednesday. You said on Wednesday to go to bed early on Thursday, so they had plenty of time to figure out how to fit it early on.
I don't think so.
So you're going to have to, we're going to have to press through this. Well, after 8 years, that's not changed.
Okay, I'm going to start droning on, and maybe that will act as a call to other people to come and sit down. I was just wondering how many people have sampled vitamin C that we kindly offered.
I chewed mine, it was a bad idea.
Uh-huh. Good. I was just a bit concerned because I made a joke yesterday morning about amphetamines, and then there were some unmarked white tablets outside. People might not have trusted me.
At the time when I was a bit more scruffy than I am now, and I arrived back from a holiday on a Greek island with a tin of unmarked honey that was served from some local thing, just wrapped in foil, and a plastic bag full of sage that a kind person had given us, and a little film canister full of aspirin that had turned into white powder. People at customs say, "So what's this one, sir? So what's this one, sir? So what's this one, sir?" Just went on and on. In the end, they offered to unpick the stitching on my rucksack if I complained anymore. So I just said, "Okay, you can look at it."
I think we're enough. Remember, I mentioned my friend Jem Bendel on day one and how he's written a book. Well, some years ago, he became the professor of leadership and sustainability at the University of Cumbria.
Watch the water on the laptop. That's close. Yeah.
And so he invited me to attend a a leadership course. So I just went along. I didn't know what to expect. In the first day or two, it became apparent that leadership didn't mean anything. If you look at Hitler and Churchill as great leaders, which they obviously were, then you can hardly find anything between them. And then so you have to break down the discourse into leadership styles to account for the fact that leaders have nothing in common that you can actually name. And we broke it down further and further, and it turned out that leadership is whatever we define it to be. And with that in mind, I'm now a qualified leader, whatever that means, I think to apply it to my role in this conference. And so the way I've applied it, and what I think maybe leadership might come down to if it wasn't just a word in the dictionary, I think it involves listening to what's going on in the room and then giving it back in a kind of digested format that enables everyone to identify with the narrative, and therefore it brings people together. So I think that's what leaders are doing. They bring people together under a narrative, usually by listening, but it could also be by force or, the structures of power. And that hopefully accounts for all leadership that ever happened. So that's what I'm doing in this conference. I want to echo back to you what I think I'm hearing. And I've made it my job to talk to as many people as possible for as long as possible. So what I think I'm hearing is that most of us haven't got any money, and we're working very hard. However, some of us do have some money. We can name those people because they're very obvious. They are Informal Systems and EXA. EXA just understood yesterday that they've received a grant of the order of 300,000 euros, something like that. Yeah, thank you. It's clear what some people want to do. There's a very strong feeling in the room to build some kind of formal collaboration. EXA have an accounting system and a budget to use and build the accounting system, which involves all the staking and performance metrics and things. And so what I feel we're moving towards collectively is a new arrangement whereby there's a little money, at least initially, funneled towards the organizations and projects in the room on condition that they administer it through a new system that EXA will build. So the money will be more than enough, I hope. This is just my feeling. I'm not committing anybody to anything. The money would be more than enough to cover the inconvenience of working in a new kind of accounting system, and therefore it would be enough to support and encourage a little bit all the organizations here to participate. And then EXA can say to the donors, the One Foundation, look, it's happening, we're doing it. And then hopefully more money will flow in the not too distant future to fund the collaboration in a deeper way. So I don't want to say any more about that because it's not any of my business really, but I just wanted to offer it as a starting point for how we might collaborate going forward, especially with the good news of the new funding for EXA. So before we move on to our friends at Mutual Credit Services, just a couple of announcements. Today will be the money burning ceremony. Would you like to say anything about that, Julio? Yeah? How we can prepare for it psychologically?
Yeah, so money burning rituals are meant to be consensual, so you do not have to burn money if you do not want to. No one should be forced to burn money, but if you so wish to, you can. So bring cash and any other form of money that you may have because of the game we're playing.
I haven't been attending the open space sessions, especially not the planning. So I just saw on the wall the other day a lot of session proposals, and I have to break it to you that most of them aren't going to happen. But it was designed from the start that we would limit the open spaces to try and have better attended open spaces. And there are other conferences where the open space is a complete anarchy, free for all, in a good way. And so you get more sessions, but there have been less this time by design. If all goes according to plan, we'll have another 4 sessions this afternoon, 2 and then 2. But who knows if things will go according to plan. Okay, handing over now to Dill and Tom from Mutual Credit Services, who are going to present and inquire, perhaps. You might have to switch that on. Present and inquire into what might be a synthesis of all the stuff that we've learned this week. I don't need any more introductions, do I?
No, we can
Can't think of anything
explain
else.
ourselves.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So we've got quite a lot to say, but we've tried to break it up. So there'll be quite a few spots for Q&A, and we've got we've got a mini workshop, and then the end a sort of longer workshop. So hopefully you won't get bored. So Tom and I are Mutual Credit Services, and very broadly, we don't have a big project. We combine together as much as we can that we find useful, and we're a sort of consultancy and a service agency to other projects. So we work with activists in contexts where we can find them. And at the moment, we're not really selling ourselves. We're waiting until people come to us. So we're here because of some convictions. There's an omni crisis, et cetera, et cetera. It's going to have a severe aspect on all of us, civilization, all our hopes and dreams. And the thing that's really pressing for me is civilization. I'm not sure the species is going to get wiped out by anything short of complete disaster. We're pretty tough. But civilization is a project that is not encoded in DNA. It's in very fragile words and pictures and stories, and those are quite easily deleted, and then things have to start again, and that would be a shame. So we're in favor of the evolutionary project, and civilization's the forefront of that, as far as we can tell. So coming back to us, we're working on economy and money. What's that for? Well, we think that economy and money are key aspects of the building of civilization. It's through material interdependence across out-groups, so different in-groups realizing that they have things they need and building a layer of collaboration and coordination that's labeled economy, and using money to keep score, that we build new, looser in-groups. And that supports diversity. Very old in-groups, tribal in-groups, you had to really be one of the in-group, and there was not much space for you to be different. So we see civilization and global networks and things not as just a bit of neoliberal stuff, but actually a space where we can become more richly individual. And so that's worth supporting. We see the evolutionary challenge now, not really an evolutionary challenge to the species, but to this sort of artificial life form, which is the global economic system, which is a complex adaptive system, which, as far as we can say, is in a predator-prey relationship with the biosphere, and it has no predators itself. So, the story of that is not usually a good one. And so how do we get past that? Well, it's our duty, those of us who care, to try and help civilization get to the next stage where it consciously manages its own evolution and doesn't just carry on being a predator, because the biosphere is easy to destroy. So that's a lot of the stuff. I've got some other things to say here. There is an enormous latency, we believe, in the peoples of the world to do this work, but they are trapped in a lot of stories, a lot of power systems, and in a lot of feelings of helplessness. And weirdly, it comes down to groups like this to come up with new imaginaries and offer new stories, new choices, so that those people can exert their agency. And that's, in the end, what we use economics for, is to make places of agency where people can socially coordinate well. For us, if we empower such groups at all sorts of scales to issue their own credit, condition markets to serve their needs with inside monies relating well to outside monies, there's a chance that that could lead to deep and hopefully progressive systems change. So for those reasons, money feels to us like the deep leverage point where we can usefully work in furthering those hopes. So, what we're not is economists, developers, mathematicians, social entrepreneurs, crypto economists, movement builders, marketers, engineers. We're none of these. Tom's a physicist, I'm an architect. So we weren't born to do this work. We're here because of those convictions, those insights. We're doing our best. Thank you very much, all of you, for doing your best. And we've learned an awful lot over the last couple of years from a lot of people, and we hope to carry on learning from you and with you. So what we have realized only fairly recently, that there is this thing which we think we are going to be able to label ourselves, and we need to have that label because we need to recruit other people to have this capacity, mesoeconomic designers. So we'll say more, hopefully explain what that means, but it deals with hierarchies of scope, buildable markets, inside money for inside flows, and it involves design. And I think everyone here is doing design. I think design is sort of the fundamental human capacity. But I would say that because I'm a designer. Design requires good models of the context you're in. And that includes all the constituents of that model. So users have a label, but they're not a thing. They're an integral part of a system. So we try and work as much as we can with communities who have real needs, real ambitions, real problems, and co-design with them. But at the same time, our models have to go beyond the immediate needs of people, the immediate apparent problems, and we need some very high quality models that cover all sorts of levels of scale, from deep theory right through to practice and all levels in between. So hopefully this thing is going to work. Is it playing? Yes, it is. There you go. So what we sort of, our big vision is a recursive economy where there's a sort of fractal layering, roughly the same underlying principles are happening at all scales and are able to thus speak to each other across scales, but also adapt to the different scales. And what we'd like to do now is, before we jump into the presentation, is do a tiny mini workshop. And the mini workshop is basically your row, 2, 3, 4 people, just for a couple of minutes. Think and talk amongst yourselves about what features of a recursive economy might look like. And then just 2 or 3 minutes, and then we'll just get people to call out things. And hopefully all of those will be things that we're going to cover in the presentation, but we'll write them down and try and cover things that we're not. So is that clear, what we're hoping you'll have fun doing? Anyone, a question? Question?
Can you go back and just give a quick summary of recursive economy?
Okay, so without wanting to prefigure it, the idea is that everyone in a recursive economy sort of understands what money's about, what it's for. It's not this abstract thing that's far away. So there are small monies that are local to you, that you know what they're for and why they're there and how to change them if you need to. But that's just local. There also need to be layers and layers, regions, bioregions, wider networks, and then of course places which are not physical places, economies of affinity and things like this. And all of these need to sort of nest and overlap and interact to produce a sort of healthy ecosystem of an economy. So we've got ideas about that, but I mean, they're theories, but if you amongst yourselves can think of what things around recursive economy might be, that might be useful to us and useful for following the presentation. Does that make sense? Cool. Okay. Well, yeah, just align yourself in your rows or your little groups and have a chat, and we'll not bother you for a minute or two.
Good. Move myself so I can kind of just about get a glimpse of what's like next. I'm just gonna, I don't know, I'm just kind of like rotating so I can see when you're switching to speak next. Looks like the Broadly map hasn't loaded.
Ah, right. Okay.
Screen.
Okay. That's annoying. Oh, well, I can just get it up. Oh, I can't. Oh, I can if I get the URL. You got the tab open on this machine. You got the Broadly map tab on this
No, I
machine.
should. I can find it very quickly.
Quite pleased with that.
Yeah, it's good.
It wasn't a long time.
Yeah. It's just untitled. Okay, I'll have to get it from Telegram.
Oh, yeah, because you were working in that.
Yeah. Although this looks long blank. Oh no, there it is, it's loaded. Okay, there you go. So you just need to do screen grab into, so it's not going to come up here, that's blank.
Yeah.
So you need to exit this. Oh no, it's there, it's just not loading.
Oh, no.
Hang on, well, it's reading off your copy, which looks like it hasn't synced.
But I don't need the picture on here anyway.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you've got the picture. So all I need is the notes.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
So back into presenter view.
Yeah, so just didn't load it to present.
Okay, yeah. So I just tilted the laptop there slightly so I can see when you're transitioning slides because I couldn't quite see it as well as before.
Right. Good.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, it's in here as well, actually. Yeah. Great. So I'm going to click onto that one.
More people shouting out.
Yeah. I was no speaker notes for this. I'm just
Fine. Yeah. It's worth noting that these things down and when we're going to come back to them. Maybe
I think we should make notes of what people write out.
Into the workshop later on and just say, okay, here's a reminder.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to give you another 30 seconds or so. We have to carry on. So just thanks. Buzzing. Okay, we're going to come back together. Clap once if you hear me. Clap twice if you can hear me. Clap 3 times if you can hear me. There will be a longer workshop at the end of the session, so you'll have a chance to have lots of fun later, not listening to us. But really keen to hear any sort of buzzwords, sort of quick things, no long statements, just things that came up. And Tom's going to write them down. So.
Recircularity.
So yeah, actually Tomasz zeroed in on the topological structure as a scale-free network which has a fractal structure, and I was talking more about the fact that when we talk about recursive systems or recursive structures, we implicitly we are implying an unspoken assumption that we find it interesting for such a structure to emerge naturally bottom up.
I think we determined that not everybody wants to be a Forex trader. I think it's part of perhaps the danger in a decentralized monetary system is that you will have to decide which money, depending on market conditions, you'll want to hold versus other ones. And that could be very not desirable, I think, for a lot of people.
Yeah. And one thing is, for payment, you can use different vouchers. Even for value reserve, you can use whatever, no? I mean, gold, diamonds, or these vouchers that represent the trust in this economy, blah, blah. But at the end, when you trade with someone else, different things, in order not to be a trader, normally you think on an international unit of account, or so that's the hardest part of it.
Thank you.
Thanks. I think we noticed last night as we drew money out of the casino into the Ko-Fi Commons Alliance that was really helpful to form a coalition. So we were just talking about guilds and how a guild can help in many different accounting, law, shared services that can help improve the entrepreneurial skills of the whole network.
Yeah, the key, I think, design point, which I don't think we have the palette of structures that we would need yet, is if once they sort of call them pockets, call them units, and not quite boundary based, is first of all, easy generation of them. But then second of all, the interaction between what is that pocket and the outside of it, and how to expand both of those palettes is a key factor of building different visions of recursive economies.
Thank you. Wow, this is pretty hot stuff.
We talked a lot about trees and how trees can communicate and defend each other from threats and so on. And there is a good essay by Ursula Le Guin called Larger Than Empires, but More Slow. And I think recursive economies can be larger than empires and more slow.
Brilliant. Larger than empires and more slow.
So very quickly, we thought universal awareness of economic practice as a fundamental point, as opposed to the unknown autopilot mode. And then the sort of focus on the meso-economic layer. So no, everybody knows about macro, everybody knows about micro, and everything in between is sort of forgotten, and that connects to the bio-region and the fractal nature of the system.
Later, that's exactly the introduction we wanted. Okay, Hans. Oh.
To put it basic, it's economy. You can't do it alone. So it could have the sense of come together to see what has to be done again and again.
Great. Brilliant. Thank you. That seems to have worked. Okay. So, hang on. Oh, yes. Can we go to the next slide? So this is an incomplete thing. We recently discovered, well, we discovered it a while ago. We had this thing called Wardley mapping, which I think is very powerful. It has an axis which is visible. In other words, you know, the overt, right down to the invisible, the almost forgotten. And then along here, this is the sort of from imaginary right the way through to commodity. And in theory, we can map where different aspects of our working practice and systems and models are, and this is incomplete, and see how we want them to evolve. We definitely want some aspects of our work to become more and more of a commodity. We'd really love people to be able to start a local community with, well, less trouble than WordPress has become, with about as easily as it was to set a WordPress up about 5 or 6 years ago when there weren't too many options. Yeah. Not going to really say much more about that. There's a lot of stuff on there. There's a lot of stuff still missing. There's a lot of work to be done figuring out how they map together and where they really are. But yeah, it gives a little idea of the sort of lot of stuff that we're trying to do. The points on here are various things. This sort of breaks the Wardley map, but projects, software, models, tools, organizational, and then there's a layer of theory which didn't even make it on here yet. So they're components of a system. That's the yeah. Well, you're not. That's just like we're doing a lot of shit.
It's great. You gotta read some.
There's lots more of presentation to come, honestly. Yeah. Okay, next slide. So, in a very real sense, we're trying to do far too many things, all of them suboptimally. Why don't we focus? Well, this economy thing and its mapping onto society and its mapping onto the biosphere is a complex thing. In a complex system, in the end, as Aldous Huxley said, nothing but everything will really do. Each project of ours is an instantiation or a pilot of a model that is derived from and feeding back into our sort of what we're now calling Ko-Fi meta models. We didn't call them that until a couple of days ago. More about these in the rest of the presentation. Meta models are not just economics. They involve governance, organization, culture, complex systems understandings, scales and scopes, pattern language as a tool for dealing with those. It also involves change. So we have to have theories and practice of change and understanding of how all of those things interact. It would be enough to write a lot of theory, to do a lot of thinking about how that, but in fact, if you don't put that theory into practice in real places with real people, with real needs, with real trouble, in a variety of contexts, your models always lack richness and cannot be tested and therefore don't develop. So we need requisite variety, which is a cybernetics term in our models to handle the variety of reality. And you only find out whether you've got requisite variety in your model when you discover actually what goes on. We need to understand ecosystems, feedback, synergies. We need to move from designing things very, very slowly and carefully with a few pilot communities towards things which become easier and easier to replicate, easier and easier to understand, where the stories have become more and more culturally embedded. It's the stories that actually govern people's interaction with the economy. The mathematics is not interesting. You can tell yourself a huge variety of stories about the mathematics. They change how you interact with the numbers, which changes the culture, which in the end changes the underlying machinery. And that's where we are. We're stuck in